He challenged a black man as a joke. What happened shocked everyone. A 6, 7-year-old black grandfather walked into a dojo and shattered the ego of a champion coach in front of an entire crowd without throwing a single punch. 1 second he was just another old man in worn-out boots. The next he was the storm no one saw coming. He moved like memory. He hit like silence. And he reminded every person in that room, and now every person watching this, that real power isn't loud, it isn't angry, and it doesn't need permission to be respected. This is not a fight video. This is a reckoning. A reckoning for every time society looked at someone's skin, their age, their clothes, and decided they were harmless. But here's the truth. You don't get to measure someone's worth by what you see. Because some legends don't walk in with a spotlight. They walk in through the side door, and they change the whole room. If you've ever judged too quickly, if you've ever been judged too easily, this story is yours now. Watch it, share it, carry it, and before we begin, ask yourself, what if the strongest person in the room was the one you overlooked? The snow had turned black near the corners of Flatbush Avenue where the plows never quite reached. It clung to the sidewalk like history no one wanted to remember. A man stepped off the Q train at Church Avenue Station and moved without hesitation, his gait steady despite the January wind biting through his worn wool coat. His name was Eli Morgan, 67 years old, black, Brooklyn-born, a night shift security guard with arthritic knuckles, a subway pass, and a grandson. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 4:30 p.m., Eli walked 10 blocks through the cold to take his grandson Malcolm to a martial arts academy just past Prospect Park. It was one of those modern facilities built in a repurposed brownstone glass doors, polished oak floors, fluorescent lights that hummed overhead like a warning. Tuition wasn't cheap, but scholarships made room for kids like Malcolm, the kind of kid who didn't wear branded gear, who didn't say much, who lived with his grandfather above a laundromat and rarely got invited to birthday parties. Inside the lobby, the other parents sat with Starbucks cups and AirPods. They wore fleece-lined coats, college hoodies, engagement rings with too many carrots. Most of them had never spoken to Eli. They nodded sometimes, smiled politely, but their eyes rarely lingered. In New York, you can pretend anyone doesn't exist if you avoid eye contact long enough. Eli didn't mind. He wasn't here to be seen. He sat near the radiator on the old wooden bench, elbows on his knees, watching Malcolm stretch on the mat with kids half an inch taller and twice as confident. His eyes didn't move much, but when they did, they noticed everything. That day, the gym buzzed louder than usual. Coach Logan Hayes had just joined as the new head instructor. He was young, maybe 32, white, lean, with the kind of muscles you earn from expensive gyms and perfect jeans. He had a following on social media, amateur titles, sponsorships, swagger. He walked in with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never been ignored. His gi was custom-made, stitched with his name and a gold lion crest over his chest. He gave the room a long, lazy scan before his gaze stopped on Eli. Just for a second. No words were spoken, but something passed between them. Not recognition, not threat, just wait. Eli didn't move. He just exhaled slowly, steam curling from his mouth like a signal only some would see. Malcolm didn't notice, not yet, but something was beginning. Something that would not be reversed. By the time the class had hit full rhythm, the gym buzzed with a subtle but sharp tension. Not chaos, never that. But the kind of layered rhythm that New York knows well. Clipped commands, sneaker soles squeaking on vinyl, water bottles clinking, laughter held a second too long. Eli remained on the bench near the old radiator, still as furniture, watching as Malcolm struggled through his drills, tight stances, uneven breath, the occasional misstep corrected with a soft grunt of frustration. Eli noticed everything, but made no sign of approval or disappointment. He was no stranger to restraint. Across the room, two mothers leaned toward each other, shielding their words with polite smiles. One wore a Columbia parka with fresh fur trim, the other a Burberry scarf she never took off indoors. "That's the boy on the free program, right? The one from Flatbush?" the first whispered. "I think so," the second replied. "I heard he lives with his grandfather, single guardian." the first said, the sound hanging in the air like cheap perfume. Neither of them turned toward Eli, but the intent had already landed. Logan Hayes prowled the mat with the energy of a man auditioning for a bigger stage. His movements were sharp, precise, almost performative. His voice didn't rise, it cut. When he spoke, students responded as if summoned. Every few minutes, his eyes drifted toward Malcolm, narrowing slightly as if trying to decode what didn't fit. The boy was fast, yes, but too fluid, too instinctive, the kind of movement that suggested something untrained, untaught, but not unlearned. At the end of class, Logan clapped once. The room quieted. Good work today, he said. But remember, technique isn't what you do when you're comfortable. It's what you do under pressure. His gaze landed on Malcolm, then deliberately shifted to Eli. Some of us, he added, his tone laced with something almost imperceptible, have had too much time to get comfortable just watching. The parents chuckled. The kids weren't sure if it was a joke, but they laughed anyway. Logan leaned against the desk, arms crossed. You ever train? He asked, eyes on Eli now. Or are you more of a sidelines kind of guy? Eli didn't answer immediately. He looked at Malcolm instead, who now stood stiff, eyes wide with silent warning. After a beat, Eli spoke. I used to. His voice was steady, unremarkable, like he was naming a street he once lived on. Logan smirked. Different era, I guess. Different rules. He turned to walk away. Now we teach how the game's really played. Eli's gaze didn't follow him, but it stayed longer than anyone else's. Later that night, as they walked home down Ocean Parkway, past shuttered storefronts and the faint hum of streetlights, Malcolm finally asked, Why didn't you say something? Eli didn't look at him. Because wolves don't bark when pups pretend to howl. And here cast them. Malcolm said nothing, but the silence between them was no longer empty. It was waiting. The weather outside hadn't changed, but something inside the gym had. It wasn't louder. It was sharper, cleaner on the surface, and colder underneath. The kind of tension you don't hear but feel like walking into a room just after someone has said something they shouldn't have. Logan had been waiting, not for a chance, but for a moment. He'd crafted it quietly, over days. A whisper here, a chuckle there. Students started to look at Eli differently, some with curiosity, others with the kind of subtle amusement that never shows up in photos but lives in silence. No one was overtly cruel. They didn't need to be. In places like this, cruelty hides behind charm. It was Friday. Class was in session. Malcolm was doing pad work with a taller boy who hit too hard and apologized too late. Logan didn't stop it. He corrected someone's footwork, complimented another's speed, then called the group in. The students moved quickly, eager for attention, eyes bright with anticipation. Let's try something new, Logan said, wiping his hands with a towel that bore his initials. Let's talk about pressure. Let's talk about how people act when the moment is real. We train for self-defense, right? For the unpredictable. But what if that unpredictability walked through our front door? The students laughed. A few parents perked up. Logan's tone was light, but something behind it wasn't. Sometimes we need to step outside the script, see what instinct really looks like. He glanced toward the viewing bench. Sir, he said, raising his voice just enough, you've been here every week. I respect consistency, so I'd like to invite you to join us. A quick demonstration, purely friendly. Heads turned. Eli didn't. Logan walked closer, still smiling. You ever trained? You sit like a man who's been in the ring. Maybe not lately, but once. Eli looked at Malcolm. The boy stared at the floor, frozen in place. I'm serious, Logan said. We talk about respect here, about community. This is part of that. Bridging the gap, no pressure, just light movement. One mother pulled out her phone. A boy whispered, He's actually gonna do it. Eli finally stood. He didn't speak. He didn't look at Logan. He folded his coat once, placed it neatly on the bench, and walked toward the mat with the kind of stillness that made people nervous without knowing why. Logan extended a hand, as if inviting him into a dance. Just show us something, he said. Eli didn't shake it. He stepped into the circle, nodded once at Malcolm, and turned to face the center of the mat. His stance wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even technical. It was something else, older, quieter, heavier. For the first time that day, no one spoke. Not because they were watching a demonstration, because they had no idea what they were watching, and that made it impossible to look away. At first, no one knew when the fight began. There was no bell, no announcement, no stance struck. Logan had bounced on his heels like he was warming up for a match he'd already won. Eli stood still, hands by his sides, feet shoulder-width apart, eyes half-lidded, as if bored or distracted. Not ready, not dangerous, not there. The students watched with that restless anticipation you see in a crowd before a street performance, the quiet hope that something viral is about to happen. Logan jabbed. Once, twice, light taps, testing space. Eli didn't respond, didn't blink. Logan smirked. The audience chuckled. Phones tilted up. This would be quick. Then came the third jab, a little faster. Eli shifted, not back, not sideways, but barely enough to let the punch glide past the air in front of his nose. The crowd went quiet without meaning to. Logan reset, now circling, his feet picking up speed. He threw across, a hook, a fake low kick followed by a snap front kick. Nothing landed. Eli hadn't moved far, just enough. His shoulders tilted, his hips pivoted, his weight slipped through space like smoke through fingers. No wasted motion, no reaction time, no sign of effort. By now, no one in the room was laughing. Logan's tempo changed. His face flushed. The next combination came faster, sharper, meaner. The thud of strikes hitting air filled the gym like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Eli's hands never lifted. He wasn't blocking. He wasn't retreating. He was erasing himself second by second from where the fight was trying to happen. Then Logan stepped in with a spinning elbow, a flashy, unnecessary move thrown by someone used to being watched. As he turned, Eli stepped off the line and walked a half step forward. Logan's momentum carried him into nothing. Off balance, overextended. Eli didn't strike. He simply tapped the back of Logan's shoulder with two fingers. Logan froze. Everyone saw it. It wasn't a counter. It was a checkmate. But Logan didn't stop. Embarrassment is louder than instinct. He lunged again, this time a takedown attempt, messy and emotional. Eli didn't sprawl. He didn't resist. He stepped into it, and in a motion so smooth it looked like choreography, Eli used Logan's momentum, twisted his hips, and guided the man down like a child placing a toy on the floor. The thud when Logan hit the mat was soft, but final. Eli remained standing. He hadn't broken a sweat. For a full 5 seconds, no one moved. Not the students, not the parents, not the staff. Phones hung in midair like forgotten tools. Eli turned to Malcolm. The boy stared, unblinking. What passed between them wasn't pride. It was revelation. And Logan, still on the mat, realized too late that the lesson had never been about fighting. It had been about knowing who not to fight. At first, no one knew when the fight began. There was no bell, no announcement, no stance struck. Logan had bounced on his heels like he was warming up for a match he'd already won. Eli stood still, hands by his sides, feet shoulder-width apart, eyes half-lidded as if bored or distracted. Not ready, not dangerous, not there. The students watched with that restless anticipation you see in a crowd before a street performance, the quiet hope that something viral is about to happen. Logan jabbed. Once, twice, light taps, testing space. Eli didn't respond, didn't blink. Logan smirked. The audience chuckled. Phones tilted up. This would be quick. Then came the third jab, a little faster. Eli shifted, not back, not sideways, but barely enough to let the punch glide past the air in front of his nose. The crowd went quiet without meaning to. Logan reset, now circling, his feet picking up speed. He threw a cross, a hook, a fake low kick followed by a snap front kick. Nothing landed. Eli hadn't moved far. Just enough. His shoulders tilted, his hips pivoted, his weight slipped through space like smoke through fingers. No wasted motion, no reaction time. No sign of effort. By now, no one in the room was laughing. Logan's tempo changed. His face flushed. The next combination came faster, sharper, meaner. The thud of strikes hitting air filled the gym like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Eli's hands never lifted. He wasn't blocking. He wasn't retreating. He was erasing himself, second by second, from where the fight was trying to happen. Then Logan stepped in with a spinning elbow, a flashy, unnecessary move thrown by someone used to being watched. As he turned, Eli stepped off the line and walked a half step forward. Logan's momentum carried him into nothing. Off balance. Overextended. Eli didn't strike. He simply tapped the back of Logan's shoulder with 2 fingers. Logan froze. Everyone saw it. It wasn't a counter. It was a checkmate. But Logan didn't stop. Embarrassment is louder than instinct. He lunged again, this time a takedown attempt. Messy and emotional. Eli didn't sprawl. He didn't resist. He stepped into it. And in a motion so smooth it looked like choreography, Eli used Logan's momentum, twisted his hips, and guided the man down like a child placing a toy on the floor. The thud, when Logan hit the mat, was soft, but final. Eli remained standing. He hadn't broken a sweat. For a full 5 seconds, no one moved. Not the students, not the parents, not the staff. Phones hung in midair like forgotten tools. Eli turned to Malcolm. The boy stared, unblinking. What passed between them wasn't pride. It was revelation. And Logan, still on the mat, realized, too late, that the lesson had never been about fighting. It had been about knowing who not to fight. No one spoke. Logan sat upright on the mat now, blinking, breathing hard through his nose. The impact hadn't broken any bones, but something deeper had cracked. Around him, students hovered in a stunned silence, the kind that doesn't come from awe, but confusion, uncertainty, as if someone had pulled the floor out from under their understanding, and it hadn't hit bottom yet. Eli stepped back once, slowly, as if the moment didn't belong to him, as if he just borrowed the space. He didn't bow. He didn't explain. Then, quiet at first, came the sound of rapid typing, fingers flying across phone screens. A few gasps, a name spoken like a question. No, wait, that can't be. A boy held up his phone, eyes wide. Guys, look at this. They looked, and there it was. Eli Morgan, Golden Gloves national champion, 1,978. U.S. Olympic boxing team finalist, withdrawn before Seoul, 80, record 43-0, never defeated, disappeared, no official retirement, no interviews, no trace. Another screen showed an old black and white photograph. A young man, bare-knuckled, gloved fists lowered at his sides, face bruised but proud. The resemblance was undeniable. The eyes hadn't changed. Students turned, slowly. Parents leaned forward. The gym shrank around Eli, as if it too was only now realizing who had been sitting on that bench all these weeks, silent, steady, invisible. Logan stood. He didn't speak. He couldn't. His mouth opened once, then closed again. The man he tried to humiliate had circled, performed in front of, joked about, was not a nobody. He was a ghost from a history Logan didn't even know existed. But Malcolm knew now. The boy stared at the photo on the phone, then up at his grandfather. Why would you hide that? Eli looked at him. His voice was low, too low for the others to hear, because people cheer for fists until they're pointed at the wrong man. I didn't want you to grow up thinking the world respects power. Malcolm swallowed, hard. His fingers clenched the straps of his backpack. So, you gave it all up? Eli nodded once. To raise you. That was the only fight worth staying in. The boy blinked fast, but no tears fell. Not here. Not now. Logan tried to step forward, maybe to apologize, maybe to explain, but Eli was already walking past him. Not fast, not proud, just done. And behind him, the room stayed frozen, because, for the first time, they weren't staring at a legend. They were realizing they'd tried to teach a god how to pray. Malcolm stood in front of him now, breathing hard, his fists still clenched as if the fight had somehow jumped from the mat into the space between them. The room had gone silent again, not out of reverence this time, but out of fear. Fear that something more dangerous was happening than any punch could deliver. "You were him," Malcolm said, voice sharp, almost accusing. "You were the guy. The one in all those articles. And you never told me." Eli's face was still, but his jaw tensed. "You let me get picked on," Malcolm continued, louder now. "You let them laugh. You let them talk like we were nothing." "I didn't let them do anything," Eli said, low and even. "You did," Malcolm snapped. "You sat there and watched." Eli stepped forward, not angry, but something colder, sharper. "Do you think silence is weakness?" "You hid," the boy shouted. "You hid from them, and you hid from me." Eli's voice cracked, not from volume, but from something older than pain. "I buried a brother for this sport." Malcolm blinked, stunned. "What?" "He was driving to my Olympic qualifier," Eli said. "I was in the back, warming up. Tap, tap, tap. Shadow boxing. 15 minutes before the fight, they told me he died 2 blocks from the venue I won that night, but I never felt a second of it." Malcolm's mouth opened, but nothing came out. "I wore that gold around my neck like a chain," Eli said. "Every time a reporter shook my hand, I felt him slipping away. Every crowd cheering made the silence at his funeral louder. So I stopped, cold. I walked away from the ring, the money, the name, because the price was blood, and I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life earning what I couldn't forgive." Malcolm looked at him, eyes glassy. "So you just gave up?" "I gave you a grandfather," Eli said, sharper than ever. "I gave you a man who could show up for parent-teacher night, who didn't die chasing ghosts, who wouldn't let you grow up thinking that fists are what make a man." Malcolm stepped back, breath unsteady. Eli stepped forward. "You think what I did in that ring today was a fight? That wasn't a fight. That was memory. That was guilt with gloves on. And I hope to God you never have to carry that kind of weight." No one in the room breathed, because this wasn't a victory. It was the sound of a man still surviving his greatest loss. Logan stood there as if the ground beneath him had shifted and no one warned him. His hands dangled at his sides, stripped of command, his chest rising with short, fractured breaths. The weight of the room was no longer his to hold. It had shifted to the quiet man he tried to humiliate, and now stood beside, speechless. "I was wrong," Logan said, the words more exhaled than confession. "I thought I knew what power looked like." Eli didn't respond. The silence he gave back was surgical. Logan's eyes burned. "You didn't have to do that. I pushed you into it. And I don't even know what I was trying to prove." Still nothing from Eli. Just eyes. Watching. Logan swallowed hard. "I taught them to strike first. You taught them to stand still. That's what they'll remember." In the back, a mother lowered her phone. Another shifted uncomfortably in her seat. One of the boys dropped his gaze, cheeks flushed. None of them had spoken, but every word hung over them too. They had played their roles in the performance laugh tracks in a humiliation they didn't understand until it was over. And Malcolm, now standing a half step closer to his grandfather, watched Logan not with contempt, but with something else. Clarity. Eli finally spoke. "Everyone's tough," he said, "until the room goes quiet. I cured." The words landed like stone dropped into still water. No drama, no scream, just impact. He stepped forward, not toward Logan, but toward Malcolm. Put a hand on the boy's shoulder, then turned back. "Don't teach them to fight like men," Eli said. "Teach them to be one." And in that moment, Logan didn't just lose. He unraveled, not from pain, but from recognition. That strength isn't earned on mats or in sweat, or by titles stitched into a uniform. It's forged in silence, in restraint, in the moments when no one's watching and you choose not to hit back. The gym didn't applaud. It held its breath, because they weren't looking at a man anymore. They were looking at the truth, and it was still standing. They didn't say a word on the walk home. There was nothing left to explain. No speeches, no smiles. Just the city humming around them, and the silence between two people who had finally stepped into the same rhythm. Malcolm walked beside Eli, not behind him, not looking up at him with questions, just with clarity. There was no pride in his eyes, no shame either. What lived there now was something quieter, a kind of knowing, a kind of respect that couldn't be taught, only earned. And Eli hadn't earned it today. He had been earning it for years, in silence, with presence. In every moment he chose not to speak about who he was because he'd been too busy becoming who Malcolm needed him to be. That night someone uploaded the video. It wasn't edited, it wasn't flashy, no dramatic music, no filters, just a single camera phone capturing a moment the world didn't deserve to see, but needed to. The views came quickly, the headlines slower. Then came the questions. Who was he? Why did he disappear? Where had he been hiding? And in every comment, under every clip, was the same echoing truth. He wasn't hiding. We just never looked close enough. But Eli didn't read the articles. He didn't open his phone. He was at the kitchen sink rinsing two chipped mugs. Malcolm sat at the table, still in his uniform, still holding his breath. "Grandpa," he asked quietly, "if they ask you to come back to fight again, what would you say?" Eli didn't turn around. "I already fought," he said. "The fight was never in the ring." Malcolm said nothing, because he knew, and that night the city didn't sleep the same. Because in a world loud with performance, one man had whispered something true, and the world would spend a long time trying to forget it. But it wouldn't, because some legacies aren't written in gold. They're carved in silence, and they last forever. They thought he was invisible, a forgotten man on the sidelines, just another shadow in a room full of noise. But in the silence he rose, and when he moved, the world held its breath. This is not just a story about martial arts. It's a story about legacy, about restraint, about what it means to carry power and choose not to use it until the moment truth demands it. In a time where we chase spotlight and mistake volume for value, one man reminded us, dignity needs no audience, and real strength leaves no bruises, only awakenings. If this story shook something inside, you don't scroll past it. Share it, spread it, carry it, because silence like his is rare. And if we don't listen, we'll forget what real heroes look like. Hit that like, smash that subscribe to our channel, and tell us in the comments who have you overlooked today. Thank you for watching. Now go and be the person they never saw coming.